Orders to prepare for overseas deployment reached the headquarters of the 1st Infantry Division in late April, 6 weeks after the first American combat troops landed in South Vietnam.
We went on a monstrous train from Fort Riley to Oakland, California. We got on 3 ships and sailed to Vietnam. For a year, we had learned everything about the 1st Division and all its traditions. We had a tremendous amount of esprit de corps. Frank McCarthy, rifleman.
By late October, the entire division had arrived in country. More than 15,000 troops, backed by the most sophisticated arsenal of weaponry the world had seen. The division's mission was to defend the northern approaches to Saigon, a pie-shaped expanse of thick jungle, malarial swamplands, rice paddies, and rubber plantations, roughly the size of Washington State. They had been sent to protect the people of South Vietnam and to defeat a communist insurgency. But in a war without fronts, the line between friendlies and enemies was often unclear.
You go through the town during the day, and they have out the American flags, and they're waving everything and real happy with us, and you go back at night, and the VC flags are out.
For the young American soldiers, average age 19 and a half, it was an alien world, at once hostile and alluring.
Dear Mom, Vietnam has my feelings on a seesaw. This country is so beautiful. The farmers and their rice paddies with their water buffalo, the palm trees, birds, even the strange insects. For a fleeting moment, I wasn't in a war zone at all. Private First Class George Williams, 16th Infantry.
At first, the division confined its operations to patrols and small-scale sweeps near its base camps. But all that changed early in the year as the division plunged deep into the heart of Viet Cong territory along the axis of Highway 13, better known as Thunder Road. For the infantry, the men who called themselves grunts, it was 30 days in the field followed by 3 days in the rear, month after month, until their year-long tour of duty was up.
99% of the time was walking through the jungle, sweating, burning up, or getting wet during the monsoons.
That year seemed to get worse and worse. Never a rest. Never a moment's break. Frank McCarthy, rifleman.
The relentless humping took its toll. In boredom, in fatigue, in the danger and terror that was always there. Booby traps, mines, snipers, ambushes.
They just kept moving toward us. It looked as if we were going to be overrun. We were told to pop smoke, and airstrikes were dropped within 50 yards of our position. So close you could feel the heat. First Lieutenant Lee F. Jones, 2nd Infantry.
We'll bring him back here to you.
The army we had in Vietnam when I was there was the finest army the United States ever put in the field. They were better educated, for one thing. They were a little younger, a little more audacious. They'd do anything asked of them. Volunteer for the most dangerous missions. Harry Summers, Battalion Operations Officer.
As the big unit war escalated, the American command decided to mount a massive multi-divisional drive into the Viet Cong stronghold known as the Iron Triangle. After 4 days of saturation bombing, the 1st Infantry Division led the way. The main target of Operation Cedar Falls was the fortified village of Ben Suc, a communist base camp on the banks of the Saigon River. The Americans expected heavy resistance, but most of the enemy troops had fled. Beneath the hamlet, the division's tunnel rats found an elaborate complex of underground bunkers, workshops, and barracks.
You'd go down a little rat hole and find equipment as good as anything we had. They really built a maze in there. This area was the base from which they operated against Saigon. So the idea was to clear the civilian population out and essentially make it unusable for Charlie. David Ross, medic.
Operation Junction City, the largest of the war, kicked off in late February with a massive air assault by soldiers of the 173rd Airborne Brigade and the Big Red One. During the weeks that followed, the division clashed repeatedly with a crack 9th VC Division. This time, the Communists were unable to elude the tightening vice of the American attack. As the year wore on, fierce fighting continued throughout the division's area of operations. Casualties on both sides mounted.
One man, one loss, wounded or killed, is just as devastating as 10 or 20 or 100. And I felt this love that you can only feel in the trench. You depend on the guy, you're married to him, and he covers your back. Dust-off was incredible. This was the medevac people. They were incredible. And I saw so many guys live because of dust-off.
The biggest battle of the year took place in the fall at Loc Ninh near the Cambodian border. Communist forces suffered staggering losses, and the American command was quick to declare a major victory. General Westmoreland saw a light at the end of the tunnel. Then came Tet. In the midst of a tense Lunar New Year truce, the cities of South Vietnam exploded in violence. More than 80,000 communist troops launched a coordinated series of surprise attacks across the country. The 1st Division, like most American units, was deployed as a reaction force, rushing to the aid of South Vietnamese forces that were the chief target of the Tet attacks. Although the Communists failed to achieve their military objectives, their bold gamble shattered American hopes that the war would soon be over. The light at the end of the tunnel dimmed. In the wake of Tet, the war changed, and so did the division's mission. Determined to thwart any future attacks on the cities, the Americans increasingly abandoned the aggressive tactics of search and destroy and focused their efforts on protecting the population. To prevent the Viet Cong from replenishing their heavy Tet losses with fresh troops, the division built a network of fire support bases astride the main infiltration routes. The Communists responded by attacking these fixed positions, in regiment strength, always at night. First came the mortars, then the sappers with their satchel charges, then the telltale sound of AK-47 fire, hundreds of invisible troops opening up, all at once, probing for weak points in the perimeter.
They just kept coming and kept coming. We had the artillery firing point blank, trying to get the VC that were trying to crawl over the wire. Felipe de la Rosa, 4th Cavalry.
In March 1969, the division fought a major battle with the NVA inside the Michelin rubber plantation. But large-scale operations were now rare, and much of the division's energy became devoted to pacification programs and to preparing the South Vietnamese Army for the eventual U.S. withdrawal. In December 1969, President Nixon issued orders to bring the 1st Division home. 4 months later, General Creighton Abrams, commander of all U.S. forces in Vietnam, addressed the division's last remaining troops.
The 1st Division has been true to its reputation in this war as in all others going back to 1916. More than any other division in the Army, it has represented a constancy of those essential virtues of mankind: humility, courage, devotion, and sacrifice.
Though some American units would continue to fight 2 more years, for the Big Red won, the Vietnam War was over. It was time to go back to the world. When it left, the division carried with it a host of unit and individual citations, including 11 Medals of Honor. But this legacy of valor had been earned at enormous cost. Nearly as many men killed or wounded as in each of the 2 world wars. Casualties of America's longest war on the battlefields of Vietnam.